Hi Hugo, today is the 17th of August 2022. It's summertime. I'd hoped to be in Japan by now. I've tried and tried and tried to come to see you. I need some paperwork from Okar that Okar won't give to me, so I can't attain a visa to come and see you. I think we've talked about this a lot, but um, yeah, without it, the Japanese officials won't let me in. I've tried to contact the embassy in England, try to convince them to let me come to see you. I've started speaking to some people to try to send some letters to Okar to help hopefully make her change her mind. Um, yeah, so I am trying my best to try and get this situation sorted out, but it's not easy right now. But yeah, more generally, the the well, it seems like Corona's getting better, but obviously the reason why Japan won't let me in is because there's still a coronavirus issue in Japan. Um, it should be said as well, actually, that the tourist visa is available in Japan, but only for guided tours. And I'm obviously I want to come and see you, so I can't get a guided tour. Um, but yeah, I'm going to keep fighting, and I'm going to really try soon to get there as quickly as I can to see you, because I miss you and I love you. Um, so uh, generally speaking, we're having some fun most Saturday mornings on Facebook Messenger when we play games together. We're playing a lot of Minecraft at the moment, and that's been really good fun. Mostly you still get onto survival and then get rid of my weapons, and then before you know it, I'm getting killed and killed and killed. But you think it's funny. We also play Mario Kart quite a bit. And sometimes we play Luigi's Mansion too, but mostly it's Minecraft and a bit of Mario Kart. Um, yeah, what else is happening in my life? I'm working still at Sheffield University, doing what's called a postdoc, so doing research and then writing papers. I'm still working on rice a bit, but mostly on wheat now and soybean. So still things that are important for England, Japan, and the whole world really. Trying to help crops to grow better under future conditions, um, and yeah, otherwise just trying to build up the house, 186 Buchanan Road, and sort of yeah, that's it really. So I'm going to carry on reading Matilda. So Matilda, from the last chapter, we saw that that poor girl got thrown into the field, and now we're going to talk about the next chapter, which is about Bruce Bogtrotter and the cake. How can she get away with it? Lavender said to Matilda. Surely the children go home and tell their mothers and fathers. I know my father would raise a terrific stink if I told him that the head mistress had grabbed me by the hair and slung me over the playground fence. No, he wouldn't, Matilda said, and I'll tell you why. He simply wouldn't believe you. Of course he would. He wouldn't, Matilda said, and the reason is obvious. Your story would sound too ridiculous to be believed, and that is Trunsbull's greatest secret. What is? Lavender asked. Matilda said, Never do anything by halves. If you want to get away with it, be outrageous. Go the whole hog. Make sure everything you do is so completely crazy it's unbelievable. No parent is going to believe this pigtail story, not in a million years. Mine wouldn't. They'd call me a liar. In that case, Lavender said, Amanda's mother isn't going to cut her pigtails off. No, she isn't, Matilda said. Amanda will do it herself. You see if she doesn't. Do you think she's mad? Lavender asked. Who? The Trunchbull? No, I don't think she's mad, Matilda said, but she's very dangerous. Being in this school is like being in a cage with a cobra. You have to be very fast on your feet. They got another example of how dangerous the headmistress could be the very next day. During lunch, an announcement was made that the whole school should go into the assembly hall and be seated as soon as the meal was over. When all the 250 or so boys and girls were settled down in the assembly, the Trunchbull marched on to the platform. None of the other teachers came in with her. She was carrying a riding crop in her right hand. She stood up there on the centre stage in her green breeches and legs apart, and riding crop in hand, glaring at the sea of upturned faces before her. There she is. What's going to happen? Lavender whispered. I don't know, Matilda whispered back. The whole school waited for what was coming next. Bruce Bogtrotter, the Trunchbull barked suddenly. Where is Bruce Bogtrotter? A hand shot up among the seated children. Come up here, the Trunchbull shouted, and look smart about it. An 11-year-old boy who was decidedly large and round stood up and waddled briskly forward. He climbed up on the platform. Stand over there, the Trunchbull ordered, pointing. The boy stood to one side. He looked nervous. He knew very well he wasn't up there to be presented with a prize. He was watching the headmistress with an exceedingly wary eye, and he kept edging further and further away from her with little shuffles on his feet, rather as a rat might edge away from a terrier that is watching it from across the room. His plump, flabby face had turned grey with fearful apprehension. His stockings hung about his ankles. This clot, boomed the headmistress, pointing the riding crop at him like a rapier. This black head, this foul carbuncle, this poisonous pustule that you see before you is none other than a disgusting criminal, a denizen of the underworld, a member of the mafia. Who? Me? Bruce Bogtrotter said, looking genuinely puzzled. A thief, the Trunchbull screamed. A crook, a pirate, a brigand, a rustler. Steady on, the boy said. I mean, dash it all, headmistress. Do you deny it, you miserable little grumboil? Do you plead not guilty? I don't know what you're talking about, the boy said, more puzzled than ever. I'll tell you what I'm talking about, you suppurating little blister, the Trunchbull shouted. Yesterday morning, during break, you sneaked like a serpent into the kitchen and stole a slice of my private chocolate cake from my tea tray. That tray had just been prepared for me personally by the cook. It was my morning snack, and as for the cake, it was my own private stock. That was not boy's cake. You don't think for 1 minute I'm going to eat the filth I give to you? The cake was made from real butter and real cream, and he, the robber bandit, the safecracker, that highwayman standing over there with his socks round his ankles, stole it and ate it. I never did, the boy exclaimed, turning from grey to white. Don't lie to me, bog-trotter, barked the Trunchbull. The cook saw you. What's more, she saw you eating it. The Trunchbull paused to wipe a fleck of froth from her lips. When she spoke again, her voice was suddenly softer, quieter, more friendly, and she leaned towards the boy, smiling. You like my special chocolate cake, don't you, Bog-Trotter? It's rich and delicious, isn't it, Bog-Trotter? Very good, the boy mumbled. The words were out before he could stop himself. You're right, the Trunchbull said. It is very good. Therefore, I think you should congratulate the cook. When a gentleman has had a particularly good meal, Bog-Trotter, he always sends his compliments to the chef. You didn't know that, did you, Bog-Trotter? But those who inhabit the criminal underworld are not noted for their good manners. The boy remained silent. Cook, the Trunchbull shouted, turning her head towards the door. Come here, cook. Bog-Trotter wishes to tell you how good your cake is. The cook, a tall, shriveled female who looked as though all of her body juices had been dried out of her long ago in a hot oven, walked onto the platform wearing a dirty white apron. Her entrance had clearly been arranged beforehand by the headmistress. Now then, Bog-Trotter, the Trunchbull boomed. Tell cook what you think of her chocolate cake. Very good, the boy mumbled. You could see he was now beginning to wonder what all this was leading up to. The only thing he knew for certain was that the law forbade the Trunchbull to hit him with the riding crops that she kept smacking against her thigh. That was some comfort, but not much because the Trunchbull was totally unpredictable. One never knew what she was going to do next. There you are, cook, the Trunchbull cried. Bog Trotter likes your cake. He adores your cake. Do you have any more of your cake you could give him? I do indeed, the cook said. She seemed to have learnt the lines by heart. I wonder what this cake is. Then go and get it, and bring in a knife to cut it with. The cook disappeared. Almost at once she was back again, staggering under the weight of an enormous round cake on a china plate. Oh my goodness. The cake was fully 18 inches in diameter, and it was covered with dark brown chocolate icing. Put it on the table, the Trunchbull said. There was a small table at centre stage with a chair behind it. The cook placed the cake carefully on the table. Sit down, Bog Trotter, the Trunchbull said. So sit there. The boy moved cautiously to the table and sat down. He stared at the gigantic cake. There you are, Bog Trotter, the Trunchbull said, and once again her voice became soft, persuasive, eyes gentle. It's all for you, every bit of it. As you enjoyed that slice you had yesterday so much, I ordered cook to bake you an extra large one just for you. Extra large one, all for yourself. Well, thank you, the boy said, totally bemused. Thank cook, not me, said Trunchbull. Thank you, cook, the boy said. The cook stood there like a shriveled bootlace, tight-lipped, implacable, disapproving. She looked as though her mouth was full of lemon juice. Come on then, the Trunchbull said. Why don't you cut yourself a nice thick slice and try it? What now? The boy said, cautious. He knew there was a catch in this somewhere, but he wasn't sure where. Can't I take it home instead? He asked. That would be impolite, the Trunchbull said. A crafty grin. You must show Cookie how you're grateful you are for all the trouble she's taken. The boy didn't move. Go on, get on with it, the Trunchbull said. Cut a slice and taste it. We haven't got all day. Here he goes. The boy picked up the knife and was about to cut into the cake when he stopped. He stared at the cake, then he looked up at Trunchbull, then at the tall, stringy cook with her lemon-juice mouth. All the children in the hall were watching tensely, waiting for something to happen. They felt certain it must. The Trunchbull was not a person who would give someone a whole cake to eat it just out of kindness. Many were guessing that it had been filled with pepper or castor oil or something some other foul-tasting substance that would make the boy violently sick. It might even be arsenic, and he would be dead in 10 seconds flat. Or perhaps it was a booby-trapped cake, and the whole thing would blow up the moment it was cut, taking Bruce Bogtrotter with it. No one in the school put it past the Trunchbull to do any of these things. I don't want to eat it, the boy said. Taste it, you little brat, the Trunchbull said. You're insulting the cook. Very gingerly the boy began to cut a thin slice of the vast cake. Then he levered the slice out. Then he put down the knife and took the sticky fingers in his hand and started very slowly to eat it. It's good, isn't it? The Trunchbull asked. Very good, the boy said, chewing and swallowing. He finished the slice. Have another, the Trunchbull said. That's enough, thank you, the boy murmured. I said, have another, the Trunchbull said, and now there was an altogether sharper edge to her voice. Eat another slice, do as you're told. I don't want another slice, the boy said. Suddenly the Trunchbull exploded. Eat, she shouted, banging her thigh with the riding crop. If I tell you to eat, you will eat. You wanted cake, you stole cake, and now you've got cake. What's more, you're going to eat it. You do not leave the platform, and nobody leaves this hall until you've eaten the entire cake that is sitting there in front of you. Do I make myself clear, Bog Trotter? Do you get my meaning? The boy looked at the Trunchbull. Then he looked down at the enormous cake. Eat, 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 the Trunchbull was yelling. Very slowly, the boy cut himself another slice and began to eat it. Matilda was fascinated. Do you think he can do it? She whispered to Lavender. No, Lavender whispered back. It's impossible. He'd be sick before he was halfway through. The boy kept going. When he had finished the second slice, he looked at the Trunchbull, hesitating. Eat, she shouted. Greedy little thieves who like to eat cake and must have cake. Eat faster, boy. Eat faster. We don't want to be here all day, and don't stop like you're doing now. Next time you stop before it's all finished, you'll go straight into the chokey, and I shall lock the door and throw the key down the well. The boy got a third slice and started to eat it. He finished this one quicker than the other two, and when that was done, he immediately picked up the knife and cut the next slice. In some peculiar way, he seemed to be getting into his stride. Matilda, watching closely, saw no signs of distress in the boy yet. If anything, he seemed to be gathering confidence as he went along. He's doing well, she whispered to Lavender. He'll be sick soon, Lavender whispered back. It's going to be horrid. When Bruce Bogtrotter had eaten his way through half of the entire enormous cake, he paused for look at that, just a couple of seconds and took several deep breaths. The Trunchbull stood with hands on hips, glaring at him. Get on with it, he shouted. Eat it up. Suddenly, the boy let out a gigantic belch which rolled around the assembly hall like thunder. Many of the audience began to giggle. Silence, shouted the Trunchbull. The boy cut himself another thick slice, and started eating it fast. There were still no signs of flagging or giving up. He certainly did not look as though he was about to stop and cry out. I can't eat any more. I'm going to be sick. He was still in... Yeah, so there was no sign of him saying that. He was still in the running. And now a subtle change was coming over the 250 children watching in the audience. Earlier on, they had sensed impending disaster. They had prepared themselves for an unpleasant scene in which the wretched boy, stuffed to the gills with chocolate cake, would have no surrender and beg for mercy, and then they would have watched the triumphant Trunchbull forcing more and still more cake into his mouth of the Garskin boy. Not a bit of it. Bruce Bogtrotter was 3/4 of the way through and still going strong. One sensed that he was almost beginning to enjoy himself. He had a mountain to climb, and he was jolly well going to reach the top or die in the attempt. What is more, he had now become very conscious of his audience and how they were all silently rooting for him. This was nothing less than a battle between him and the mighty Trunchbull. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Come on, Brucey! You can make it!" The Trunchbull wheeled around and yelled, "Silence!" The audience watched intently. They were thoroughly caught up in the contest. They were longing to start cheering, but they daren't. I think he's going to make it, Matilda whispered. I think so too, Lavender whispered back. I wouldn't have believed anyone in the world could eat the whole cake that size. The Trunchbull doesn't believe it either, Matilda whispered. Look at her, she's turning redder and redder. She's going to kill him if he wins. They're all cheering and happy. The boy was slowing down now. There was no doubt about that, but he kept pushing the stuff into his mouth with the dogged perseverance of a long-distance runner who has sighted the finishing line and knows he must keep going. As the very last mouthful disappeared, a tremendous cheer rose up from the audience, and the children were leaping onto their chairs and yelling and clapping and shouting. Well done, Brucey! Good for you, Brucey! You've won a medal, Brucey! Oh dear. He did it. The Trunchbull stood motionless on the platform. Her great horsey face had turned the colour of molten lava, and her eyes were glittering with fury. She glared at Bruce Bogtrotter, who was sitting on the chair like some huge overstuffed grub replete. Comatose, unable to move or to speak. A fine sweat was beading his forehead, but there was a grin on triumph on his face. Suddenly, the Trunchbull lunged forward and grabbed the large empty china platter on which the cake had been rested. She raised it high in the air and brought it down with a crash right on the top of wretched Bruce Bogtrotter's head, and pieces flew all over the platform. The boy was by now so full of cake that he was like a sack full of wet cement, and you couldn't have hurt him with a sledgehammer. He simply shook his head a few times, and went on grinning. Go to blazes, screamed the Trunchbull, and she marched off the platform, followed closely by the cook. Way! So the next chapter is called Lavender. In the middle of the first week of Matilda's first term, Miss Honey said to the class, I have some important news for you, so listen carefully. You too, Matilda. Put that book down for a moment and pay attention. Small eager faces looked up and listened. It is the headmistress' custom, Miss Honey went on, to take over the class for one period each week. She does this with every class in the school, and each class has a fixed day and a fixed time. Ours is always 2 o'clock on Thursday afternoons, immediately after lunch. So tomorrow at 2 o'clock, Miss Trunchbull will be taking over for me for one lesson. I shall be here as well, of course, but only as a silent witness. Is that understood? Yes, Miss Honey, they chirped. A word of warning to you all, Miss Honey said. The headmistress is very strict about everything. Make sure your clothes are clean, your faces are clean, and your hands are clean. Speak only when spoken to. When she asks you a question, stand up at once before you answer it. Never argue with her, never answer back, never try to be funny. If you do, you will make her angry, and when the headmistress gets angry, you had better watch out. You can say that again, Lavender murmured. I am quite sure, Miss Honey said, that she will be testing you on what you are meant to have learned this week, which is your 2 times table. So I strongly advise you to swat it up on it when you go home tonight. Get your mother or father to hear you on it. What else will she test us on? Someone asked. Spelling, Miss Honey said. Try to remember everything you've learnt these last few days. And one more thing, a jug of water and a glass must always be on the table here when the headmistress comes in. She never takes a lesson without that. Now, who will be responsible for seeing that it's there? I will, Lavender said at once. Very well, Lavender, Miss Honey said. It will be your job to go to the kitchen and get the jug and fill a water with and put it on the table here with a clean, empty glass just before the lesson starts. What if the jug's not in the kitchen? Lavender asked. There are a dozen headmistress's jugs and glasses in the kitchen, Miss Honey said. They are used all over the school. I won't forget, Lavender said. I promise I won't. Already Lavender's scheming mind was going over the possibilities that this water jug had opened up for her. She longed to do something truly heroic. She admired the old girl Hortensia to distraction for the daring deed she had performed in the school. She also admired Matilda, who was sworn her to secrecy about the parrot job she had brought off at home, and also the great hair oil switch where she bleached her father's hair. It was her turn now to become a heroine, if only she could come up with a brilliant plot. On the way home from school that afternoon, she began to mull over the various possibilities, and when at last the germ of a brilliant idea hit, she opened it and lay her plans on the same kind of care the Duke of Wellington had done before the Battle of Waterloo. Admittedly, the enemy on this occasion was not Napoleon, but you would never have got anyone at Crunchem Hall to admit that the headmistress was a less formidable foe than the famous Frenchman. Great skill would have to be exercised, Lavender told herself, and great secrecy observed if she was to come out of this exploit alive. There was a muddy pond. 1 second. One sec, I'm just getting a drink. dry throat from this. There was a muddy pond at the bottom of Lavender's garden, and this was the home of a colony of newts. The newt, although fairly common in English ponds, is not often seen by ordinary people because it is shy and a murky creature. It is an incredibly ugly, gruesome-looking animal, rather like a baby crocodile but with a shorter head. It is quite harmless but doesn't look it. It is about 6 inches long and very slimy, with a greenish-grey skin on top and an orange-coloured belly underneath. It is in fact an amphibian which can live out in or out of water. That evening Lavender went to the bottom of the garden determined to catch a newt. They are swiftly moving animals and not easy to get hold of. She lay on the bank for a long time, waiting patiently until she spotted a whopper. Then, using her school hat as a net, she swooped and caught it. She had lined her pencil box with pondweed, ready to receive the creature, but she discovered that it was not easy to get the newt out of the hat and into the pencil box. It wriggled and bosh, bosh, bosh. It wriggled and squirmed like quicksilver, and apart from that, the box was only just long enough to take it. When she did get it in at last, she had to be careful not to trap it in its tail in the lid when she slid it closed. A boy next door called Rupert Entwistle had told her that if you chopped off a newt's tail, the tail stayed alive and grew back into another newt 10 times bigger than the first one. It could be the size of an alligator. Lavender didn't quite believe that, but she was not prepared to risk it to happening. Eventually she managed to slide the lid off the pencil box right home, and the newt was hers. Then, on second thought, she opened the lid just the tiniest fraction so that the creature could breathe. The next day she carried her secret weapon to school in her satchel. She was tingling with excitement. She was longing to tell Matilda about her plan of battle. In fact, she wanted to tell the whole class, but she finally decided to tell nobody. It was better that way, because no one would, even when put under the most severe torture, would be able to name her as the culprit. Lunchtime came. Today it was sausages and baked beans, Lavender's favourite, but she couldn't eat it. "Are you feeling right, Lavender?" Miss Honey asked from the head of the table. "I had such a huge breakfast," Lavender said. "I really couldn't eat a thing." Immediately after lunch, she dashed off to the kitchen and found one of the Trunchbull's famous jugs. It was a large bulging thing made of blue glazed pottery. Lavender filled it with a handful of water and carried it together with the glass into the classroom and set it on the teacher's table. The classroom was still empty, quick as a flash. Lavender got her pencil box from her satchel and slid open the lid just a tiny bit. Sorry, it's hard to hold this. Wait a minute. The newt was lying quite still. With great care, she held the box over the neck of the jug and pulled the lid fully open and tipped the newt in. There was a plop as it landed in the bottom. Then it thrashed around wildly for a few seconds before settling down. And now, to make the newt feel more at home, Lavender decided to give it the pondweed from the pencil box as well. The deed was done. All was ready. Lavender put her pencils back into the rather damp pencil box and returned it to the correct place on her own desk. Then she went out and joined the others in the playground until it was time for the lesson to begin. There goes the newt. Right, I think that's enough for today. I'll try and to get more recordings on because I've been a bit slow lately. I just wanted to say as well that I've been really proud of you recently with your command prompt work with Minecraft. So particularly like you learning how to use switches and using different coding stuff to to make your games better. I've been learning this week about different coding things as well, using command blocks and using if statements and effects and give and what other ones have we got? Clear, and how to place blocks and things as well, and also how to get like sort of special sort of powers and things so you can run faster and things like that, which is part of the effect. So yeah, anyways, that's enough for today. I hope when you see this video, or if you see this video at any point in your life, that it's a good one for you. I love you very much, and I wish I could be with you right now, but you know, I'm going to keep things going, and you know, keep trying to make things as good as I can for you from afar until I get there. All right, well, I love you lots. Good night.